In today's video, we are talking about 10 simple steps you can take on your prepping journey to feel more confident and prepared for real life emergency. Here's the good news. You don't have to stock hundreds of pounds of dried beans. You don't have to build the ultimate bug out bag to be prepared. You just have to take small, consistent actions. Welcome back to Preparedness. If you haven't been here before, my name is Laura. I have been on this prepping journey for just a little over 6 years now, and I love talking about how to get started in prepping because I think there is a lot of misinformation out there, and prepping doesn't have to be complicated, and that is what I absolutely love about it. I've been gone for a couple of months as my husband and I finished out our build for our house here in Oklahoma, but I am back and I am excited to be on this journey with you in 2026. So let's jump into the 10 steps that I would take today if I was starting over from scratch with nothing in my pantry, with no idea about how to do prepping other than knowing that I wanted to be ready for emergency situations. Step one, I would start with a realistic end state. And for me, I defined end state as the number of days you want to be prepared for an emergency situation. So think about something happening where your power is out for a few days, or there's a storm in your local area where you can't get to the store easily for a week. What is the number of days that would make you feel calm and confident and secure that you knew you could take care of your family? I absolutely think everybody should start with at least 72 hours. The goal is definitely 2 weeks. And obviously, I am prepared for much longer and think really you probably should be too. I want you to think about the number of days you would like to be able to stay in your house, stay comfortable without having to go to the store. Just having that clear end state in mind can take a lot of the overwhelm and the stress out of prepping. When we know how many days we are shooting for, then everything else can flow from that. We know how many supplies to buy. We know exactly what types of emergencies we think we might be facing. We can really build out our supplies to make sense for that comfort level that we have. And again, there's no one right answer for this. You need to start small or you're going to get overwhelmed. So again, start with that 72 hours or that 2-week kind of benchmark if you are just new to prepping, and then stretch to that 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, or even kind of a move into more self-sufficient sort of lifestyle, which again is what my husband and I are hoping to move to over the next few years. Number 2, I would focus on pillars instead of just checklist. Again, when I started my prepping journey, I read every book I could find. I listened to podcasts. I watched YouTube videos. I downloaded every checklist that I came across and really started building out supplies and bins and things before I had really gone into that first step of figuring out how long did I want to be prepared for, and without thinking about why I was sort of stockpiling these supplies. So now what I really encourage people who are coming to me to ask about prepping, my students that are in some of my programs, is think about prepping in terms of pillars. And the way I break this down is just thinking about pillars as sort of your lines of effort or the areas that you are focusing on to get you to that end state. It is from the beginning to where you're trying to get to, but with very specific things in mind. So the first one is just water. We can't live without water. So water always needs to kind of be our starting point for prepping. If I'm building out my water for 72 hours, I know that I need to figure out how many gallons per person I want to store and then store that many gallons of water for the number of days that I'm trying to be ready. The second pillar is food. Obviously, we want to be able to eat while we are in any kind of emergency situation. I don't know about you, but I like food. And so having food ready for emergencies is super important. So think about those shelf-stable foods. Think about foods that you can cook without power. We want to, again, build out that food strategy based on the number of days we're trying to be prepared. We start really small at 72 hours with shelf-stable food. We build to 2 weeks with menu items that we already eat. And then we build from there with long-term food supplies. Maybe that is some dried beans or some oatmeal in the basement that you keep for emergency situations. But again, you're building on that pillar as you go to that end state that you want to do, which is the number of days you want to be prepared. Third pillar is just kind of household supplies. Think toilet paper, paper towels, cleaning supplies, maybe duct tape and garbage bags, things like that. Stuff that is going to help you keep your household running without needing to run to Walmart or Target, without having Amazon deliver something to your door. What are the household supplies you need to be comfortable? Fourth category is medical supplies. This is one that we often overlook in short-term emergency situations. Again, in a crisis scenario, it may be hard to get to medical help. You want to be able to treat minor injuries, wounds, abrasions, contusions, things like that in your your house. So building out that medical kit is really important. Again, as we extend that pillar or that line of effort into a long-term scenario, you're going to want to think about advanced medical training and things like that. But when you are getting started, that 72-hour mark is really just to have a medical kit that is fully stocked, where you know where it is, where your family members know where it is, and hopefully some basic emergency medical training. The next one is just organizing. It is, how do I organize the information in my house? How do I maybe set up an emergency binder? How do I make sure I have numbers available so that I know who to call in an emergency situation? How am I taking track of inventory of what is in my house so that I can file an insurance claim easily? It's that organization piece. And again, the longer we go, the more important that is to really be able to give us that sense of calm and security, like we have all of our little ducks in a row and we know where everything is and we can pull it out in an emergency situation with no challenges at all. And then finally, just communication and connectivity. This is things like your emergency radio, having a plan to communicate with family members, whether that's via text message chain or a Facebook app or something like that, where you know how you are going to stay in touch with people kind of moving forward. If you think about prepping with those sort of lines of effort or pillars, you are going to simplify the process exponentially. Think about what you need to do to kind of stay in each of those lines, how you would expand it out over a timeline, again, 72 hours, 2 weeks, 30 days, 60 days, longer. You are going to be able to walk through those pillars. And instead of just kind of putting a bunch of supplies together and really sort of just building out these long checklists that maybe aren't going to get you to really where you want to be, you are going to have a framework that I think is incredibly important to use as you are building out your prepping progress. The third step is really thinking about my pantry and my food storage. Again, a lot of times we rush out and we buy these freeze-dried meals, we buy these buckets of food because that's what the prepping channels tell us to do. And there's nothing wrong with those things in and of themselves. I have plenty of freeze-dried meals. I like to think of it as my fast food option for when things are in a challenge or I need to cook kind of unexpectedly. Freeze-dried meals absolutely play a role in my preparedness kind of plan. They absolutely are an important part of prepping, but they probably shouldn't be where you start. Start with the food that your family already eats. And again, this is so easy to overlook when you're getting started because it's easy to get excited about these meals and this kind of, ready to eat stuff and MREs from the military. Trust me, you don't want those. I ate them. They're awful. So steer clear. But again, getting into this prepping mindset, a lot of times that is where we immediately jump. Instead, think about your pantry as just those shelf-stable foods that your family knows, that they like, that they will eat. Again, in a time of stress, we want to go to those familiar comfort foods instead of kind of introducing weird, strange things that maybe our bodies aren't used to, that our palate is not used to, that we just don't enjoy. So start with that pantry, just build on what you have. Peanut butter and jelly and oatmeal, amazing for prepping. Don't overlook the simple things when you are just getting started. The fourth step is I would create a get out now bin. This is the bin that lives under your bed, next to your garage, somewhere that you can literally just grab it and run out of your house. It is just the essentials. It is the things that are going to help you stay comfortable for that first couple hours. It is going to be the things that allow you to rebuild that life. If, let's say, the worst happens where your house burns down and you lose everything, it has maybe a copy of your emergency binder stuff in there. I've done an entire video on the Get Out Now bin. So if you just click on that link above, you can watch it after this video. But this idea of the Get Out Now bin is just something that you can grab and go. I put that off way longer than I should have. And honestly, I had a friend who had a vacuum cleaner in her house, like probably many of us do, a robot vacuum cleaner. She had bought a battery off of Amazon. They had installed it, no big deal. She and her husband went to work. Her kids went to school. And at around 10 o'clock in the morning, they got a phone call that their house had caught on fire. Now, fortunately, they were all okay. Their dog didn't make it, which was incredibly tragic, but it also made me realize I wasn't really ready for that type of emergency. Again, I had gone into the doom and gloom prepping of getting, a bug out bag ready and how to get home in case of an emergency and all those things. But I didn't have a simple bin that I could just pick up and run out of my house with for an emergency situation like a house fire. And really, when you know someone who has had a house fire, it makes it a lot more real. The fifth thing I would do is set up that emergency binder. I've mentioned it a couple times in this video already. Having an emergency binder just gives you a one-stop shop. And the beauty of having a physical binder is that, again, again, you can put it in that grab and go bin. You can take it with you. You can also make a digital copy of it to put in that grab and go bin, which is what I recommend. And that way you have access to all of those important information at any kind of just moment's notice. And if you're further into this journey and you've made an emergency binder and maybe you haven't checked it in a while, this is your gentle reminder to go review that binder, make sure all of your information is current, make sure your documents are up to date so that you have the most important information with you if you need to leave your house in a hurry. All right, number 6, I would pick a once a month shopping trip to add to my prepping supplies. I found that when I started prepping, I would put things in my Amazon cart and I would hit buy right away because I felt like I needed everything right now. Let me just take the burden off of you. There are very few things that you need right this second outside of maybe water and some food. There are a lot of things that are nice to have in this prepping journey that will allow you to build, but we want to make sure that we are doing and buying those things intentionally, that we have a financial plan set up, that we kind of know where we are going with it. So set up a once a month or a twice a month shopping trip. That could be to your local store, like a Costco or a Sam's or Walmart, something like that, where you're going to get some bulk supplies. Or it could be your Amazon cart, where you put a bunch of things in your Amazon cart and once or twice a month you hit buy and you make sure that everything you are buying is inside that budget, that it all actually makes sense. Because again, what we don't want to do is just rush out and buy things because somebody like me or somebody else that you watch in the prepping community told you to go get it. You want to make sure that it really fits in that end state, that it goes along those lines of effort or those pillars that you're really working on, and that it makes sense for you and your family. Again, we all have different requirements. We all have different needs. And just having a once a month or twice a month shopping plan can really take that stress off. You know you're making progress because you're putting things on list. You know you have a budget. You know you have a plan, and it can just take the stress off of this constant feeling of churn that you are going to, where you feel like you have to buy something every day or buy something every week to kind of make progress on this journey. Number 7, I would focus on a reliable light source, one alternative cooking method, and one charging option for all my electronic devices. This goes back into just how we are supporting those pillars early on. We want a light source because in emergency situations, we often find that the batteries in our flashlights are out, or we don't know where those flashlights are, or that maybe our kids don't have any way to keep light on in their bedroom. Having an emergency light source is just nice because, again, it gives us a sense of comfort. I don't know what it is that's hardwired into us to not love the dark, but it is pretty much a universal thing. Even the simple act of having a light when the lights go out can really go a long way in this prepping journey to make you feel confident. It's a silly thing. It is a little thing, but trust me, it is an important thing, both from a psychological perspective and just from a practical perspective of if you have light, you can continue to do things in your house, even if the power is out. So buy one simple light source. It can be a lantern, it can be a flashlight, and make sure you have some extra batteries. Again, buy an alternate cooking source. For this, I love camp stoves or just your propane grill. Maybe you just buy an extra propane tank that you keep stocked all of the time for emergency situations. It is that easy way to cook food if that emergency extends past the point of maybe just wanting shelf-stable food. A warm meal can go a long way in providing comfort, and it's much easier to cook with the power out than we sometimes think. We get into these prepping channels and they're talking about building fires and having camp stoves outside and all the things. No, just get your propane grill. You probably already have one outside. Buy some extra propane. Now you have a way to cook in a power out scenario or in an emergency situation that is practical, that's easy, that doesn't cost a lot, that you probably already have on your property. And then the last one is just that charging source. I love battery backups, especially if they are solar powered. That is great to keep your phone charged, to keep those emergency radios charged, to stay maybe even connected from a TV perspective or something like that so that you can stay informed during emergency situations. We are very dependent on our electronic devices. And so having that emergency power option is just really nice way to, again, extend that communication piece to make sure that we have that connectivity piece because that is important for emergencies. All right, this next one is a little controversial, I'll say, I guess, is learn practical skills, not survival skills. So again, if you're in this prepping space, you've probably gone down the rabbit hole of needing to learn how to make a fire from scratch or how to, sharpen knives. All of those things are important, but when we are being realistic about the type of emergencies most of us face, they're probably not the most urgent skills to learn. You are probably much better learning basic medical first aid stuff, probably better off learning how to cook without power, how to filter water, things like that that are practical and easy that you can do inside of your home. I think a lot of times, again, the fun, exciting part of prepping is like getting all these cool skills and doing all this crazy stuff and buying these knives. And I did all of that when I started. I am a little bit embarrassed to say, but if we are really being honest about what really helps us prepare for a weather emergency, a power outage, something that you are most likely going to face in your day-to-day life, then those skills, while maybe fun and kind of exciting and certainly can be a fun bonding family activity, aren't probably the ones you want to start with. So start with the practical things. So number 9 is create a plan to stay in your house. Don't create a plan to bug out. Bugging out is probably the perennial thing that you hear from all preppers when you are getting started. Like, oh, you need a bug out bag and you're going to need to leave your house and live off the grid and lone survivor. I don't know anyone who has done that. I don't know very many people who would do it well, myself and my husband included, even with 40 plus years of military experience between the two of us. That is not really the best way to approach emergency situations. Our houses are often the safest place that we can stay because we have all the supplies that we need. We're familiar territory. We have shelter. We have something to keep us dry and warm and safe, hopefully. Anytime we can, we want to focus on preparing to stay in our house rather than preparing to leave our house. Now, I know I talked about a get out bin. There are times where you may have to leave your house, so I'm not discounting that. I'm not saying don't think about having a strategy or emergency evacuation plans. Those do play a part in prepping, but I think as you are getting started, it's much wiser to think about how do I stay in my house? How do I build out those supplies in a way that makes sense? Leads me to my 10th and final thing I would do if I was starting prepping from scratch today, and that is I would consider getting help and joining a group sooner than I did. When I started prepping, I was very reluctant to tie myself to that word. It felt a little bit icky. I didn't really want to be a prepper per se. I wasn't keen on sharing my personal information. I didn't want to be seen as somebody who was prepping. I had this military hat on where I didn't want to be kind of like, I don't know, worried about my security clearance. There were a lot of reasons that I resisted joining a group or getting help, which meant that I had a long path to my preparedness journey. I made a lot of mistakes. I spent a lot of money I didn't need to spend because I was unwilling to just lean on the people who had gone before me, to talk to other people who were in this space, because again, I was a little bit hesitant to sort of lean into that. So I would encourage you, if you are on this prepping journey, find 1 or 2 other people that you can talk to. You don't need a huge group. You just need 1 or 2 people that can kind of share some ideas with, who can talk about the things they would do in emergency situations. It can be very informal discussions. That can be a friend. It could be a spouse. It could be just someone that you know from work who you think might be into this space. You can even follow other preppers online and just join in conversation on Reddit threads or things like that, where you can learn from other people. Those are all great things to do as you are getting started, because we don't all need to learn from scratch. Learn from me. Don't do it the hard way. Don't do it all on your own. Take the things that other people have learned so that you can save the time and the money that I wasted at the beginning a little bit more quickly, and I would say a little bit smarter, right? Like, don't make the same mistakes that some of us made trying to figure this all out on your own. Which leads me to my last announcement. This year, I am launching live groups for prepping, which are really an 8-week course, kind of guided content. You will get lessons. You will get live Q&A opportunities with me. You will join a group of people who are interested in prepping. You can be as involved or as private as you want to be in that group, but it gives you a chance to kind of walk this path step by step so that it doesn't feel overwhelming. Because I think the most common thing when we get started is just trying to bring in all this information, trying to sort through what's real, what's not real, trying to not go down the doom and gloom path. And so I created the course that I wish I had had when I was getting started, which is really just a simple walkthrough of this framework, of this idea of what are you getting prepared for, what's your end state look like, how can you be more prepared, and then how do you build out those supplies in a way that makes sense, that is kind of logical step by step, so that you are not throwing away money and time and energy and effort and emotion into prepping in a way that is maybe not that useful. If you are interested, if that sounds like something you might want to do, there is a link below to join the waitlist waitlist. The course will be launching in February. So if you are watching this before February, you can still join the waitlist. I am capping it at 20 people because I want it to be a small experience. I want it to really allow us to grow together as a group. And so it is going to be capped at 20. If you think you're interested, join that waitlist. I will send you all the information when the course launches. And until next time, my friends, I just want to say, take consistent action. It is the little things that you do over time that are going to allow you to prepare for any sort of emergency situation, whether it is simple as a few hour power outage, a localized storm, or something as scary as a cyber attack that takes down the grid for days or weeks. Those things could happen, but we want to start at the beginning. We want to take consistent action, and we want to make sure that we are showing up day in and day out and really thinking about, how do I build that confidence and that resilience that I want to build in 2026? So here is hoping that this year is your best prepping year yet.